Welcome to the Debrief podcast with Matt Brown, the podcast where pastor and author Matt Brown debriefs your questions about Christianity and current issues shaping our culture. Thank you for listening and enjoy the show.
Hey guys, welcome to another episode of the Debrief. I am super excited today because we have been talking about this for a long time. So we have two special guests in the audience today, and I just want to prep parents. We're going to be talking about sexual issues today. So if you have little ones in the car, I need you to make a decision right now. But we're going to be talking about all things sexual, specifically LGBTQ+. And I have two of my good friends at Sandals Church, and I'm going to use the word gay, and then we're going to use the word same-sex attracted. I think that's what Cindy and I talked about a couple weeks ago in church. But language changes so much. Right. It's, one of my daughters told me the other day that the word lesbian is offensive, and I was like, oh, okay, I didn't know. So I'm just trying to, I'm an old man now, so I'm 51 years old, and so I don't know what's offensive or not, but we're going to use the term gay first. And so I'm going to start out with how I met you, Anissa. So I don't know if you were there at the live episode. Yeah, okay. No. So we had this live episode for the Debrief. I don't even know what episode it was, but they just let anybody come up and ask a question. Right. And here comes Anissa with her question. And I'm going to summarize because I don't remember exactly because I froze, absolutely froze. But you were like, basically like, I'm gay, I'm following Jesus, I'm married to a woman, we have kids, what do we do now? Right. That's, okay. Yeah. This is a live question and I panicked, but here's the first thing that I knew. You were sincere, you were shaking. There's about 1,000 people in that live audience, and I could not believe that you came forward to ask that question. And so that's how I met you. Mm-hmm. I think I met Cindy later at church with the kids. The kids were little then. And I thought you frowned at me. I don't know if you did, if you were you?
Yeah.
Yeah.
She didn't like you very much.
Standoffish. Yeah, because I mean, again, what is this cult leader? I mean, potentially I'm stealing, and I'm not trying to put words in your mouth, but I'm trying to steal your wife from you, your partner. This is the woman that you love. How long had you guys been together at that time?
That time we were 7 years. 7 years, and you had 3 kids. Mm-hmm. So how old do you think they were then? Your little ones were little. Liam was 1.
Yes. Yeah, okay.
Yeah. Now he's 9.
Yeah, okay. Yeah, so you had 3 little kids. And so for our listeners, so here's this issue. So we're really talking about 2 sins according to the Bible. So one is the sexual act of homosexuality. And so I like to always be very, very clear with my gay friends that being gay is just like me being straight. So like right now, I'm in front of you, I'm not sinning as a straight person. Mm-hmm. And so the same thing is true for a gay person. Just because you're gay doesn't mean that you are in this perpetual state of sin. It is the act, the pursuance, the desire. And so I was actually listening to this rabbi the other day talk about Jesus. And when Jesus says, if you look at a woman with lust in your eyes, you've committed adultery in your heart. Well, in the Hebrew word, he was making an argument that Jesus doesn't say lust, he's saying covet. And so covet is the pursuit of something that is not yours and wanting what is off limits, but you're pursuing that. And so he said it's not just, the look is not just the look, it's the intent of moving towards is what Jesus is talking about, which those men were guilty of. But so we have the sexual act of same-sex sex. And for our listeners, also sex outside of marriage between a man and a woman. So if I have sex with someone besides Tammy, I am guilty of adultery, sexual sin. And then we had this issue of divorce. And let me just tell you, Anissa, in seminary, your question never came up. Like I was like, oh my gosh, what do we do? And I truly believe it was the Holy Spirit. So I believe the Holy Spirit was moving in you. Eventually he would move in Cindy. And in that moment, and for all of our listeners who are scared to death to engage in these conversations, I think the Holy Spirit saved me. And what I said is, you two need to live as sisters. Right. I'd never met Cindy, and you need to raise your children as a family. And I just remember you looking at me, and we kind of just went on to the next question. And I was like, oh my gosh. And this is live in front of an audience of thousands and thousands of people. And I remember I had all my pastor friends text me, and they're like, that was so good. I'm like, okay, so I'm not a heretic. So that's how we met. And over the years, we've become very, very close. And I just want to talk about that journey. But Anissa serves with me. I'm trying to get her to serve closer to me because, so if you serve on Soul Care, whenever a woman comes up and talks to me, I always want another woman very, very close. And so I'm always, Anissa, I'm like, get your face right in here, because you're trying to be respectful of what the person is sharing. Right. But I want Anissa or whoever my soul care assistant is, I want them to hear every word. I don't want there to be, you know, in our day and age where men are accused of so many things, and unfortunately, I'm a man, but I'm a man in leadership, and I want our church to know that I work very, very hard to be above reproach. And so I'm like, Anissa, get in here. So Anissa and I work together, and you pray with people after every service. You're up front at the Hunter Park campus, and then Cindy works in 4th grade.
Yes,
with our kids. And I just appreciate and love you both. But I would like to just briefly start off, share your story. We'll start with Anissa. And I use the word gay, but you can use same-sex attracted. You can use whatever word you want. And just kind of share your story. And so we'll start with Anissa just because you're closer to me, and then we'll move to Cindy. So I'll help you. You were raised in a Christian home. Let's start there.
I was, yes. I was raised in a very strict Pentecostal church.
Like wild Pentecostal, or just like where people...
Yeah, it was wild.
Yeah, okay, yeah. If I was Pentecostal, that's what I'm going to be. Where I'm going all the way in.
Yeah, so we diligently attended church. We were there on Sundays, we were there on Wednesdays, we were there on Fridays. So that's what I knew, you know. And thank God for my parents that they planted that seed, because I wouldn't be here today had I not, you know. But I was raised in the church, and I gave my life to Jesus as a young girl. I was about 12 years old when I was baptized, and it was... homosexuality was not something that I knew.
Right.
We didn't talk about that in church. We didn't talk about that at home.
Right.
So when I was approached by someone who was gay, that was my first experience.
Right.
You know.
And do you care if I just specify?
Right.
And this woman was in the church.
Yes.
So I know Anissa's story.
Yeah.
So I'm trying to help her. She's nervous.
I am.
But this was a church leader in the church that
Right.
approached you.
She was, and it wasn't a secret. Everyone knew, because when my mom had told me that she was a lesbian, I had no idea what that was.
Yeah.
So my curiosity was, what is that? You know, she then became a leader in the church, and she was my youth leader. And that's how I was introduced to that. I don't. Sorry, I'm lost.
It's okay. You don't. Well, I kind of threw you out there. So I'm gonna just jump in. So you had this relationship with her, and then. Not relationship, experience. I don't know what you would say.
So we did start a relationship, and some people in the church did start to find out.
Okay.
And it was not okay, but no one spoke about it. You know, my parents were not okay with it, and it just led to so much destruction in our family. And I ended up not going to that church anymore. My parents stopped going to that church. We did try to find another church to go to, but it was out there, because the churches that we went to, Assemblies of God, they were very close. We had revivals, we had gatherings of the churches together, so it was pretty small. People knew one another, and we eventually just stopped going to church overall. But because my parents were not accepting of this lifestyle, I then ran away from home.
Right.
I was very young, and
16, right?
I was 16 years old at the time. That also led to me dropping out of high school. It was a difficult time. It was not accepted in school. It wasn't accepted at home, and I didn't have anyone to talk to. No one offered any kind of hope, suggestions, any guidance, nothing. It was, you know, just it wasn't there for me.
Yeah.
You know? So she and I were together for quite some time, and eventually we broke up. But that was the lifestyle that I knew, and it was a lifestyle that I was comfortable in.
Yeah.
You know, I did have an attraction to women when I was young. I had never had an experience with a man. You know. I will say I was insecure when I was younger, so I didn't notice if any boys noticed me. Yeah. So that played a lot into it as well. So yeah, eventually, I guess I was in that lifestyle, I believe, for maybe 13 years, for such a long time, and I was after my a relationship. I was with a woman for almost 10 years.
Okay.
And there was something already stirring in me where I needed to leave. I wasn't satisfied in that relationship, so we ended up breaking up. But the enemy is still out there.
Yeah.
He's still there waiting, and I was drawn back in, and that's when I met Cindy.
I'm the one that drew her back in.
Yeah.
It seemed so perfect.
Right.
We were.
Well, Cindy is amazing.
She is.
Try.
Yeah. Yeah.
She's great. But everything just seemed like it was so lined up. Like we both wanted the same things. We were both
You and Cindy.
very, yeah.
Yeah.
We were very attracted to each other, and we were ready to have a family.
Right.
We were ready to get married, and that's where all of this started. And she and I were together for, what did we say, 7 years? Am I going too fast?
No.
Did I miss anything?
No, you're fine.
We were together for, I think, 2 years before, or a year before we had our first child,
Yeah.
who was our daughter. And we had actually adopted her nephew because her
When
sister
he was 4
needed
years
help.
old.
Yeah. Her sister needed help with him. So
Is that the giant?
Yes.
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 Oh my gosh, he's gonna be taller than me like next month.
He's
Every time I see him, I'm just
yeah.
like, okay, let's pause there and then let's get Cindy's story because you were not raised in the church.
I was not raised in the church.
You were raised in sports. Yeah.
I was. Anything to stay away from the house, that's for sure.
Okay. And why was that? Do you feel comfortable sharing or?
Yeah. Well, when I was younger, I was sexually molested by a family member about the age of 8 years old, off and on for about 2 years. I always try to find things to escape from that. So I always try to stay busy. I got involved in sports. Luckily, it was at basketball at the time when I was 8. But I did attend Catholic church. I did the catechism.
Okay.
I did the first communion. I did whatever that next step is after communion.
Yeah.
Only attended church Sundays whenever my grandparents would take us, and then we'd be treated with McDonald's after that.
Yeah.
But after a few years, well, early on before that, my parents were, they divorced about the time I was 5 years old due to infidelity on my mom's part. And my dad left us upset, of course. Actually, he didn't leave us. We left him. And we were homeless for about 3 years, off and on. We'd stay at different places. So that was kind of my childhood. But
rough.
But I still found joy because I had 3 sisters who I can play with, who we were funny and fun, and always good to have siblings. But later on, my sister, as we got older, my closest sister, who's about 11 months younger than me, she got addicted to drugs, and so I kind of feel like I lost a best friend at that point.
Sorry. Yeah.
So in high school, I thrived in sports, and that's where I found my identity. I was really good. People were noticing, but there was always something missing, and for me, it felt like I was always looking for something to fill that need, that fulfillment. And no matter how successful I was in sports, I still was not okay. I still wanted more. So, but I was not same-sex attracted. I did find women attractive, but I didn't understand what to do with that.
Yeah.
It wasn't until I was in my 20s when I was working as a security guard, and my supervisor invited me over to her place, and then that's where it all started.
Oh, wow.
So I was an adult, but still, that's where that started. I didn't even realize that I had that kind of attraction to the point where I was going to do things. So.
Right. Yeah, and I want to talk about that at the end, just how different it is nowadays. Because I'm, I guess, 5 years older than you guys, 6 years older. It just, gay was not celebrated when we were kids. I graduated high school. I can't even believe I'm saying this. So a high school of 4,000 students, I didn't even know of one student that was gay. I'm sure they were there, but I didn't know. I'm sure some of them were my friends, but I didn't know because it was so taboo then. But now it's celebrated. And so at the end of today's show, I want you to give some advice to our parents today, because I know that there was wounding from your parents when you were like, hey, this is who I am. And they love Jesus. And so many parents today who love Jesus are like, I don't know what to tell my kid. And I see parents make mistakes from completely affirming and changing their theology to doing what your dad did, which is like, you're out. So, and we don't want to do either of those things, because Jesus wants you to love your kids but not affirm. And so let me just ask you, who was drawn to Sandals first and why?
I was.
How did you even hear about us?
My sister actually lives very close.
Okay.
So her and her boyfriend at the time had found a Sandals church.
Okay.
And when Cindy and I were together, we were looking for a church because we had a family, and that was something that, I was used to doing.
Right.
So, but that didn't work out. We went to churches and they were really weird. So we were like, we're not doing this.
Yeah.
We were looking for the affirming church.
Right.
And that was.
And they affirmed.
But it was kind of strange.
Like what? Because I've never been to a service.
It was a mix between, it was a female pastor, priest,
Yeah.
I don't know.
Yeah.
But she was wearing a robe, and it kind of seemed like a Catholic service, but at the same time, I don't know what it was, honestly.
Yeah,
I was
probably
kind of
Episcopal, I'm guessing. So
we were just looking for something, and eventually that didn't work out. So I didn't pursue anymore. We were happy for the vast majority of our relationship. Everything was good, and so when she and I started having troubles, when I was pregnant with our youngest, there was something already stirring in me. I knew something was missing. I wasn't satisfied. I wasn't fulfilled anymore. And I had a family. And just things started to move in me that it just didn't feel right. So we ended up breaking up, and I knew where I needed to go was to go back to church.
wow.
So I stepped out of the relationship.
Yeah.
And causing her to just, pain, and but that was the reason why we broke up. I know she probably didn't want to say that, but that's because I did. I was with. I stepped out of the relationship. So.
It was difficult. I had in my mind, I had built this this picture of what my life was going to be like.
Right.
I had the perfect woman. I had great kids. We had the perfect home. Everything was so wonderful. And then she fell out of love with me.
Yeah.
And that was devastating. So my sister had told me about Sandals Church, and I did not want Sandals Church to be the church. I didn't expect Sandals Church to be the church where I was going to find Jesus. Like I said, I was.
Why don't you think you wanted Sandals?
It was so big.
Oh, yeah.
It was big. There were. I didn't know anybody, and I didn't know if anybody ever knew anybody else. It was just such a big church, and the church that I was raised in was a small church. So I was looking for that.
Yeah.
But nope, God had something so different in mind. And I just remember being in church and hearing the sermon and just feeling like it was just you and I in there, and you were talking just to me.
Isn't that amazing how God does
yes.
that? Yeah.
It's
almost
scary.
creepy.
It's scary, but it's so amazing. And it's wonderful how, just feels so personal,
Yeah.
That he's there, and I felt so seen and wanted,
Right.
And
How long is that before the debrief episode where you asked me that jaw-dropping question?
that was in 2015. So I remember meeting you and just feeling in my heart that, because I was looking for a church, and I knew that God had placed me in this church. And I remember feeling the Holy Spirit tell me, this is him. This is your pastor.
Wow.
So I spoke to my dad about it, and he was like, if that's your pastor, you make sure to go greet him, tell him hi, and let him know that he is your pastor.
Yeah.
And I remember doing that. And that just, that helped me to approach you a lot more. It wasn't, Sandals Church wasn't as big as it is today, but I was able to talk to you after service. And there were a few times where I'm sure you remember I was a mess.
Yeah.
I was always crying, and I remember asking you, what to do because my wife had left me. I have these 3 kids. I don't know what to do. And I remember you just specific. I don't remember exactly what you said, but the word obedient was just so loud, and it just penetrated my heart, my mind, and I knew that's what I needed to do. So from then, I stopped trying to pursue getting our relationship back together, and I just started pouring myself into church. I started coming. I wanted to live here. There were Saturday services. I was here for both services. Sunday services, I was here for all 3. And on Wednesdays, the kids had a program. I joined a small group. That was so important. That was the best thing that I did was join a small group. And the women in that small group were so wonderful.
Yeah.
They were just so accepting. They didn't judge me. They listened to me and they loved me so well. And that was huge because none of them knew what to do with what I was going through, but they prayed with me. They prayed for me. And it was here in Sandals Church where I had a true encounter with the living Christ. Yeah. And that was just so transforming.
And I would just say to our audience is you don't have to have the answer. What you do have to do is love the person. And so for anybody out there who's gay or trans or whatever, this is what we just had a leadership meeting because we're trying to start a ministry specifically targeting is the wrong word, where it makes it easier for people to come. And so, here's what I say. I told them is that I'm okay with anybody who's seeking God. What I'm not okay with is someone who comes to our church to change us. And I wouldn't go to, a gay meeting or a gay pride parade with the intent on changing them. So my expectation is that they would do the same for us because we have religious convictions, and this is who we feel like God has called us to be. And so we want to create a place where someone who's gay or same-sex attracted or trans, if they're seeking God and they're truly seeking God, this is the place for them. If they're coming to change us or be mean and that's one of the things that's changed. When I was a kid, religious people were mean. Now, and I'm not saying religious people aren't mean. I'm just saying the tide has turned. And so, I would just say that just, you don't have to change what you believe, but there are 2 commands. One is about sexual behavior and the other is love your neighbor as yourself. And here you are, you're not just gay, you're a single mom going through a bad breakup. You're in a tough place. The church's job is to love you. And I'm so grateful that we got that right because I know we've gotten some things wrong we're going to get to. Okay, so what drew you to Sandals, Cindy?
Well, my kids, really. I wanted to spend more time with them, and they always asked me to go to church on Sundays with them, and I chose to watch a football game instead. But after a while, they kept luring me with coffees. They said, "There's fountains of coffee, Mommy. You'll love it." And I could have sworn they said it was free, but I ended up coming to Sandals. My job, because Anissa loves talking to people, and she's wonderful. So I would go pick up the kids, and by that time she might be done talking to somebody she found in the hallway. But also, the more I was around people who were loving and my kids, they're always so happy and just love coming here. Yeah. And so after a while, I started sitting and listening, as opposed to I can't wait to hear Pastor Matt say something I don't like. Right. Okay. So
which does happen.
And it was kind of like I was telling Anissa at the time, it's like, oh, well, he had to say this. And even after the debrief, you said live together as sisters, and I did not like that.
It was hard for both of us.
I know. So it was hard. Yeah, I'm like, ew, sister. But after a while, that ended up happening. But with going to Sandals Church, my kids really were the driving force behind that because they I wanted to spend more time with them. I'm a mom. I love spending time with my kids. So ultimately, I finally started attending and then dropping them off on Wednesday nights and then being with them for Awana. And then I was sitting in the auditorium, and there was people there who had their kids in Awana, and they're just kind of waiting around. And so somebody came up with the idea, let's just start a small group.
Yeah.
And that's how I got involved with the small group, is just sitting around waiting for kids. And then it just became somewhere I wanted to be, as opposed to somewhere I was not wanting.
Yeah.
So
It wasn't always happy, though.
Yeah.
There were some people in the church that were not okay with us. I know for me, when I first started coming, and I was so messed up, and I knew that I needed prayer, and I remember asking someone to pray for me, and she was not listening.
Right.
She did not hear me say, that me and my wife just broke up. I need prayer. I need help. I don't know what to do. And she kept asking me to bring my husband to church, and that they would pray for us. There's, and that was hard for me to hear, but I didn't. Maybe she thought I misspoke.
Yeah.
So that was hard for me. I know.
yeah. But I mean, for me, I started attending Sandals because of my kids, and then ultimately, just with small group and people around me, and even people at work who knew that I started going to church. I was encouraged by them, because there's Christians at work, and, and I work in a very male dominated field.
Yeah.
And most of them are not vulnerable to talk about Christ, especially in public. And I kind of opened up, and people started seeing me at work differently, believe it or not. They started seeing, have you seen Cindy? And they started noticing changes.
Wow.
And they were asking me, like, well, what are you doing? I said, well, I just started attending church, and, I gave my life to Christ.
Wow.
And so they were like, oh, okay, well, that's nice, But some people actually approach me and say, hey, I'm a Christian too. Can we pray?
Wow.
So they would pray for me. And I have friends who, one of my friends who just retired from the industry, he would always pray with me, and he was very encouraging still to this day. So
what led you to think about changing the way that you express your sexuality? Because that was a big shift for you.
Okay.
Yeah.
So the time I was spending with this other person was off and on, because I was back and forth with living that lifestyle and then being with or trying to be a parent.
Yeah.
100% of the time. So I was struggling,
right,
because I started attending church regularly. So I'm listening to the words, and I've started feeling that conviction in my heart.
Okay, let's stop there.
Okay.
What was that first time like? Because now it's not just a talk.
Yeah.
And I want everyone to listen to this, like, because people will say good talk. There's a moment where it shifts. And so were you in church last week when I talked about how to hear God's voice?
Yes.
So unbeknownst to you, God is speaking to your heart, and what's happening?
Well, honestly, what happened was I was listening to not only you, but I was listening to other sermons and just really reading and praying. And then I was actually at this person's place one day, and I heard a voice say, you should not be here. You need to go.
Yeah.
Leave right now. I literally ran out the door.
Wow.
And that was the moment when I said, I don't want to do that anymore. So
But you heard a voice.
I heard a voice.
Yeah.
And it said, you do not need to be here anymore. This is not what I want for you. And so that's when I left, and I told Anissa about it. And she was just like, that's the Holy Spirit.
Amen.
So we started working on our friendship. I started seeing her as a sister. It wasn't weird anymore. And so
That took a long time.
Yeah.
that was, I mean, it wasn't overnight, but it was a while.
Yeah.
And we knew that's where we found our joy. That's where we found our peace. I mean, we're still parents, and we're still different people that have different ideas on how to raise children. So we still have those. But it's now more difficult.
It was really difficult to go from someone who you're romantically intimate with, and then to try to see them as anything different.
Right, sure.
That was so difficult, because not only do I have to separate that, okay, fine, we're not having sex anymore. But now I can't be jealous when she's talking to other people too, because she belonged to me before. So that was, I needed a new mindset. So the fact that you specifically said you can live together, but you need to see each other as sisters.
Right.
I needed to hear that because we were living together already. Just as friends, but to hear those words, you have to use that language, talk to the kids about it. You need to start to see her that way was such just a different perspective. And it sounds strange, that it's so simple, but I didn't know that. I didn't have that perspective, so I needed that.
Right, and if somebody's lost, it's because of the children. I would not have asked you to try to live together because that is so difficult. I asked you to do that for your children because I did not want your kids to ever feel like God destroyed their family. And I just, it is hard enough to be a kid. I think that, and this is no judgment on you guys, I think it's challenging to have two moms.
Oh yeah.
I did not want to add to just the challenge of and one of your oldest is adopted. We're just piling on here, and I'm like, Lord, you hate divorce. You do not want to rip this family apart. And so I just want the audience to understand, I wasn't trying to be cruel or mean to you. I care about you two, and then I care about your three beautiful children, and I had to advocate for them too. And so that's why I advised this incredibly difficult walk, because I think that it is difficult when you're so drawn to someone and you have been sexual before. It's very, very difficult to stop that, And so we have that conversation constantly with our heterosexual couples that come in for marriage counseling and are like, you want us to stop having sex? I'm like, yes. Well, we already are. So, yeah, but do you want us to bless this union or not? And, heterosexual couples are like, what? I'm like, and so some walk away. They're like, okay. I'm like, all right. Because you can get married anywhere. You don't need us. So that's amazing. And it doesn't hurt my feelings, Cindy. I mean, a little bit that you were listening to other people. A little bit. Okay, so what's it like going, well, you've talked a little bit about this, but what's it like going from the sexual relationship to the one that you have now? So you've talked about the conflict in parenting, but just how do you guys work together as friends now? Like, how does that work?
Well, yeah, there's no more kissing and making up. Right. So we have to have conversations.
Yeah.
And like Cindy said, I can talk all day, but
I'm a 9.
Yeah.
So
Okay.
I'm relationally lazy, but I found that if I need to get my point across, I need to speak my mind.
Yeah.
Not hold it back. I would always just okay, whatever you want, Anissa.
Yeah.
Fine, we'll do that. But now it's like, nope, I do have an opine.
Yeah. And that's so important.
So that's the biggest difference. The other difference is that, I will respect each other, and, the way we live now, I was able to get us a home where we could sleep in separate rooms, and have that space. I'm on one side of the house, she's on the other. So
I know, I remember praying for that.
Yes.
And that was a big deal. And then it kind of fell out, and then it happened. And it was a whole up and down. And that's what I would just say. I think so many Christians think that when they start doing things God's way, it's going to be easy.
Oh, no.
And it's like, no. And, I just remember you each week at church, we got it, we lost it, it's not happening, and then it happened, and then we're moving.
Right. Yeah.
In December.
Yeah.
I know.
So let me ask you, let's start off with positive. And so just know that the negative question is coming. So we're going to start positive. How has Sandals Church helped you in this transition? You know what the next one is where have we missed it? So let's start with the positive so I can feel good. And then we'll start with the reality, because Sandals' vision is to be real. And Anissa, I think most churches, you were talking about the small Pentecostal church that you grew up in. I think most churches' vision is to be unreal as possible as they can with themselves, God, and others. And it breaks my heart to know that they knew this woman was gay. And did they vet her? Did they talk to her? Did they, impress upon that? I mean, you guys know with our kids ministry, we spend so much time and I mean, and I have sent people to jail from our church for violating. I mean, I didn't send them, but a judge sent them because they violated these principles. And it just breaks my heart that the church was not willing to say, hey, we got to protect our kids, because the church leadership is a de facto parent. And I see myself that in your guys' relationship. We can talk about that if that's weird or not, but I see myself as kind of like not a stepdad, but like a surrogate dad, father. You know, your kids, when they run up and hug me, it means so much to me. And I care so much for them. So where has Sandals Church, and who wants to go first? I keep asking this to go first. I'm gonna pick on you this time, Cindy. What have we done right? Because this has been difficult. So,
well, not really my experience, but the experience that drew me to Sandals Church is the fact that when Anissa went up and spoke to Adam Workman, I'm stealing your story.
Okay.
no.
So, but that to me spoke a lot, because she was broken and asked for help, and then he was like, well, let me get you some help. Listen to her, was very empathetic, and that's been my experience also with people that I serve with. Even before this debrief on Sunday, I asked for prayer from my group, and but honestly, I think just Sandals' vision of being real, to me, it was something I'd never heard of. Something that, even in a Catholic church, the small amount of time that I actually went to church, it wasn't like that. It was just listen to the priest and they spoke, and then that was it. But here, it's more about bringing your true self and talking about that and how we can change or we can address those things.
Right.
So for me, that's always been something that drew me to the Sandals, is that vision, honestly.
Yeah. So I'm going to embarrass Cindy a little bit. But we were sitting in church. It was probably a couple months ago. We were kind of talking about this idea of having this show. And I don't know what I said, Cindy, but I'll never forget what you said. And it meant so much to me. You said, I trust you, Pastor Matt. We trust you. And I think I was thanking you for trying to live this. I don't remember what I said. I'm like you, Anissa. I just talk. And, but you said that to me. And I tell my kids this all the time. I whenever we're having difficulties, I say, you never have to ask, you never have to wonder about my love for you. But I say trust is something that's earned. So I love my kids. I don't always trust them, because they violate that trust because they're sinners. And as a dad, I try really, really hard not to violate that trust with them or with my wife, because trust is broken in one instance. And when you said that to me, it was really humbling, Cindy, because, and I just want you to know that I carry that burden to try to be honorable for you and try to be honorable for both of you, and to honor the sacrifice that you're making for Jesus as we understand him. And I know we're going to get, there's going to be haters online that comment on this. And what I would say to every gay person that's listening that says that I don't understand the Greek and I'm missing out on what the Bible says, what I would say to you is we, the three of us, are trying to worship Jesus and honor him with our bodies in the way that we understand it. And if I could see scripture any other way, because I don't have one way or the other, it doesn't matter to me. What you guys do ultimately sexually, what matters to me is what God says that you should do. And a lot of my gay friends that are anti-church, they don't understand that. Like, I don't have this personal stake, like I care what you do in your bedroom. I don't, but God does. And so I'm going to try to honor that the best I can. And so when you said, Cindy, that I trust you, I felt like it was a punch in the chest, but it was a loving punch in the chest. And it was a reminder that the people of this church trust you, and I need to hold that trust carefully and delicately, because, I know that you guys love God. I know that you love me, but trust, it's a very, very precious thing. And I'm just grateful that you said that to me. And so I'm grateful that despite all that we've done, the mistakes, you trust me.
And I just wanted to add one more thing is the consistency with you, Pastor Matt, is what brought me that trust. Is always you're loving, but you're firm.
Yeah.
And so you've always been that way. And my whole life has been nothing but inconsistency.
Yeah.
So when I found that here and with you, I knew that was something that I was missing and something that I look forward to all the time.
And let me just say, Cindy, that's the Lord, because if you met young Matt Brown, there was nothing consistent about him. You know, today is graduation day. When you guys are driving here, did you see out of high school, into college?
Right.
And I was thinking about where I was headed, and it was nowhere good. It was nowhere good, and I was a mess. And last year we celebrated my birthday at my sister-in-law's house. And she said the same thing that you said. She said, you are the consistent person in our family. And that's the Lord. The Lord has cemented me as that in my biological family and in my church, because he does change the human heart when we offer it to him. And so thank you so much. And I'm grateful. Okay, your turn.
Yeah, I wanted to add too, like something about Cindy, like it was so convicting for me, because she did attend Catholic church, you know, but she did not know that Jesus died on the cross for her. She didn't know that until she came to Sandals Church and heard one of your messages that told her that. So it was so convicting for me, because I grew up in the church, and that's like Christian 101, you know.
Well, you know, at youth group, one of the youth pastors told me they were talking about the resurrection, and some kid said out loud, wait, what? He rose?
Oh, wow.
Like just...
Right.
And we just all think that that's what everybody knows.
Everybody knows that. No.
You know, because that's a game changer. Oh,
right. Right. Yeah, he did it for me. So that was huge there. But
that's one of the reasons why I serve in kids, because I don't want them to miss that. You know, I missed it for how many years? 35 years.
Right.
And then I finally heard it, and I was like, wow, it finally makes sense to me.
Yeah. When she said, why didn't you tell me?
Why didn't you tell me? So, but I mean, that's why I serve, because I want to make sure that they're getting that message.
Yeah.
So I think Sandals Church gets right is having community groups. There's always somebody willing and able to talk to help through this. I love that we have these conversations, because growing up, no one ever had that conversation with me. I love that you tell us that we need to have these conversations with our children.
Yeah.
I wasn't having those conversations. I didn't know that was what was missing. So that was something that I learned that was important, you know, and with any relationship, with mother, son, you know, sisters, you know, friends, communication is so important. And I learned that here in Sandals Church. We need to talk about everything, you know. Okay. So.
All right, Cindy. Where has Sandals Church, where do we need to do things better? And I remember one specific thing you've told me, if you don't remember.
I don't remember.
Just kind of some of the looks you get when you guys are together with your family. And it grieves my spirit.
Well, I don't want you to grieve too much, because I was talking to Anissa about that. And at the time when I felt that, it was really, I was in my guilt. I was just sitting in it.
Okay.
So it wasn't what somebody said or did. It was just really me, just not feeling good about myself and being here, you know, because I was still trying to live in the life and then still try to come here and be the mom that I'm supposed to be. So I know we went up for prayer one time, and this gentleman, poor guy, I don't see him anymore, but he was just thrown off guard.
So nervous. Yeah.
We asked for prayer, you know, we're trying to live together, and I don't remember what the prayer request was, but he was so nervous and he didn't know what to say. But Anissa's on the prayer team now, and I'm sure they're a lot better now at addressing those things and how to pray for people. But
and that's the beauty of what you guys have done, is you've helped make us a better church. So, you know, and I still don't think we're where we need to be, but we're getting there. How about you? What can we do better?
I think everything has been just so good. You know, there's so much love. There's so much now acceptance, you know, from where we've come, and the accountability was so important, you know, holding us accountable,
Okay, we're going to jump into some tough questions. And so if you're a parent out there or who has a kid that thinks maybe they're gay or trans, and I hate to lump, you know, the trans conversation is something that's new to the gay community. I mean, they just added that, and there's a big movement in the gay community to separate that out. and say, hey, this is a different thing. And that's not to offend anyone that's trans. It's just the world is changing so fast. And, and the letters just keep getting longer, and that they've just added a plus at the end so that I guess they can just, because they figured out, okay, it's too long. But what message would you have for someone that's listening that is gay and is just curious about Jesus? Like maybe I don't even know that they feel like something's missing. I mean, you said that something was missing. God actually spoke to you. That's how God spoke to me, by the way. He told me in my 20s, you need to get out. And I was with a girl, and I was gone. I was like, okay, I'm done with this. So what message do you have to someone that's gay? Because it's just a different time. You guys were alone in this. There was a lot of shame in the 90s around being gay or trans. I'm not saying that there isn't in every gay person. There's just so much less. It's just so much less nowadays. And that's not to minimize somebody's struggle, but what would you say to somebody in our church who's gay and they're like, I don't know if Jesus is worth it. I don't know if I should pursue Sandals. What would you say?
I think if you're curious about Jesus, look, come. He says, come and see, and just pursue that. But be vulnerable with him about it. When I came back to church, I was in desperate need of help. I didn't understand what was happening. I remember praying, asking for the Lord to give me clarity of where my life is, where it's supposed to be. And I was just so vulnerable with him, and praying and asking him to help, and then him helping in a way that I didn't want him to help. I didn't want him to do the things the way that he did it. It wasn't what I expected, but I reluctantly received it, and that's the biggest thing is be vulnerable and be willing to hear with an open heart and an open mind, because he's always speaking to us. He calls us to him all the time, and if we would just listen, there is only goodness in that, and like Cindy was saying, this is where you will find joy. I found so much joy and peace in Christ.
What about you, Cindy? Because your journey was a little different. So you were attending church at the same time you were sleeping with a woman. And so, I mean, that's that. And just so you know, that's where most of our gay people are that are coming to church. They're not abstinent. They're participating in their sexuality. What would you say to that person that's like, I don't know?
Well, if you're feeling that feeling of a burden or a heavy weight on your shoulders, that's a sign for you to surrender, to start seeking, start listening. Don't be afraid to open up. Don't hold back, but listen to the words that are being spoken and look for a leader or somebody that you trust in the church. And I'm talking to the people that are attending church, because there are people who they just want to live in that lifestyle, even though they know the truth. I'm talking to the people that want to free themselves from those chains. Continue to seek God. Continue to talk about what Christ has done for you. Because to me, that was the difference. What he did for me was the difference for me.
Yeah.
I could never repay that. I could never do anything. And he loved me enough to do that for me. And they need to know that, and love does not equal sex.
Right.
And that's what I had to get in my mind, is that love does not equal sex.
Yeah, that's actually, I'm glad that you said that. So we're sitting down with a bunch of ministers, and we're kind of writing out the vision statement for this future ministry for people who are LGBTQ. And I said, point number one, love is love and sex is sex. Because what the gay community has done so well is they've married those things. And I'm like, look, man, I love my wife. We are not always having sex, but I am called to always love her. And those are separate things. And we have to separate that, because otherwise we're going to lose these people that are seeking God. Did you guys get to hear this last week's sermon? Were you here for Hulda's, the message on how to hear God? So there's just so much about God that is so consistent that sometimes we miss. God's anger towards the Israelites, and some of us are like, I don't get it. I don't get why God is so angry. But you mentioned it when you said you had to release Cindy because you had a jealousy for her when she was yours. God has a jealousy for that which is his. And he is the lover that pursues. And he goes all the way in. And so this is what so many Christians miss about what happens with Huldah, what happens with Josiah. So Josiah is this young kid. He's 8 years old. He has, it's kind of like, I think our president now, I don't think he's running things. I think it's the people around him. I think the same thing was happening with Josiah. He's just a young kid. People are making the decision. Josiah didn't say, hey, let's put a penis in the temple. That's not what he did. But he did say, hey, let's take an offering to repair the temple. And this is what so many people miss. Where do they put the Asherah pole? Inside the holiest of holies. Guess where God's temple is today? It's you and it's me. And what's happening there, right? It's this sexual perversion of bringing something that should not be into something that is. And so now we're the temple. And so what you guys allow into your body sexually either is blessed by God or offends God. The same thing with me. What I do with my body either, blesses God or offends God. And so what Josiah recognized was the sacredness of the temple. And he made all these reforms. What I want our listeners to understand is, listen, whether you're gay or straight, if you are a Christian, your body is sacred.
Yes.
It is the holiest of holies, and God cares deeply about what you do with that and what you bring in. And so, there's a reason, I don't look at porn. I don't want to bring that into my eyes. I don't want to bring that into my life because I recognize. And so here's the amazing things. When I was a younger man, I would say I struggled with that. Now it's repulsive to me because God has so changed my heart. And I would just say that's a journey. Just like the journey started with you when you came to Sandals in desperation, just like the journey with Cindy, I too have my own journey. And this is what I would say for everyone at Sandals. We need to welcome people as they're on their journey, but we never compromise in pointing to the way. So we don't get to decide whether people walk the way. Jesus said, narrow is the road that leads to life, and there are few that find it. Our job is to point to the narrow road and to lovingly encourage people to come. Have you guys ever read C.S. Lewis's book, The Great Divorce?
Yeah,
I did. Yeah.
Yes. Do you remember where the angels are begging him to cross and to come into heaven, and his own mother, his own demon, all these things. So the Great Divorce is not about marriage. It's about people not getting into heaven and everything pulling you from God. And the angels are just like, come on, come on, come on. And so I would just say that our job is to root for people, to encourage people, to choose Jesus and to follow him. But ultimately, it's their choice. Even like with my kids. I love my kids. My daughter's in here. I want her to love and serve the Lord. I cannot make her. It's her choice. So I can encourage her. I can point her in that direction. And I think that's so important. Last question. How important is your church in living out your faith? I think I know the answer for you guys, but.
Well, everything that's offered here, the youth group for our oldest son is a blessing because we're women and we have a boy and he's going through, the changes, 15-year-old, and we don't know how to relate to that. Yeah. So luckily we have he has really good leaders in youth group where he can talk to them about his struggles and she's very involved. Like, hey, you need to talk to my kid about this stuff. And
I know Anissa.
So, but I mean, the church itself has so many opportunities where you just open up the door and we just need to walk in and take it, the invitation.
Yeah.
So
how about you, Anissa?
Yeah, I'm always going to go back to like the people that are here in Sandals Church that are actually living out the vision of being real. That's been so important. Deciding to follow Christ again was huge for me, and I needed to remove myself from the LGBTQ community, and that's what I did. That's what I needed to do, and having a church community to hold me accountable, that's so important to me. And not just the accountability, but the encouragement.
Right.
the reminder that I don't have to carry that shame anymore. That's been really huge for me. I've been, I think, in 3 small groups since I first started coming to Sandals Church. The first one was just all women. That was the first group that I joined, and then I moved on to a group that had men in the group because of my kids. My boys needed men. My daughter needed to see, healthy Christian men as well. And Path Group. Path Group was something huge. I was raised in a Christian church, but my religion was handed to me.
Yeah.
And I needed to discover Jesus for myself, and that's here's where Jesus was for me. It was Sandals Church. So, yeah.
Amen. All right, this is not on the list. Are you ready for this one? What would you say to a parent in our church whose kid is gay? What would you say to them? Because it's happening more and more and more. What would you say to them? Because, maybe what do you wish your dad would have said?
Love your child like no one else. Listen to your child, listen to your kids. They have so much to say, and just be patient, because sometimes they don't say it right away. They won't be wholeheartedly honest, and bring them to church. Give them a space where they could hear the truth about the love and acceptance that Jesus has for them. Talk to your kids. Talk to them and try and understand them, and don't judge them,
Have the hard conversations, because that's a really hard conversation, and no judgment. Your kids will just shut down. And when you start to start judging them or putting them down in any way, just give them a space where they can be open and honest with you. And if you can't get them to talk to you, find someone who they will talk to, that you are that you trust.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
And what I would say to every parent out there, and is parenting's the long game. And I think a lot of times we lose our minds in the moment, and we just have to understand it's a long game. And there are no more 2 surprised people in Sandals Church than Peggy and Steve Brown, who sit and are led spiritually by their son. Think about how weird that is. Like the little baby that my mom breastfed, that they changed my diapers, they taught me to walk, they taught me to talk, and now I'm their spiritual leader. And there was a time where I know they didn't see that. And what I would just say is, when you don't have the words to say to your child, say whatever you need to say to God, because God, that's what Romans says, is the Holy Spirit prays for us in utterances when we cannot speak it, when we cannot say it. The Holy Spirit intervenes and can speak to our child. And I said this last week in the sermon, your prayers will outlive you. And so just always let your kids know, I love you. I may not agree ultimately with your lifestyle choices, but man, let's be honest. Most of us don't agree with the lifestyle choices of our heterosexual kids. So, but you love them, you care for them. And so never create a category for a kid because they're gay that you wouldn't create for them because they're straight. And so I would just say, parent your kid and just say, I love you, I'm here for you, and you can trust me. And what I hope that my kids know is that even when it hurts me, I will tell them what they need to hear, not just what I want them to hear. And so they can trust me to give them good, sound advice. And I think that's so rare in the world today, especially when it comes to sexuality, because people typically, when it comes to sexuality, want something. A lover is not objective. A lover has huge stakes in the game, and oftentimes we think that person just sees us, but desire clouds. It just does. And parenting, you guys know, you have your kids, you have a love for them that's completely absent of sexual desire, but that love is intense, and that's the love that God has for us. And so I would just say, hang on and just keep loving them. And if there's anybody out there who's gay, and you're seeking God, Sandals Church is the place for you, and we will always be the place for you. We are open to you. We do not affirm the gay lifestyle, and what I mean by that is sex. I hate saying the lifestyle, but sexual intercourse. Is where we say, hey, and that's the same rules we have for those of us who are straight. We want to honor God with our bodies. And so I realize that's difficult. It sounds bizarre, but God pursues us just like he pursued Cindy, just like he spoke to you. And I love that, because what you said was almost verbatim what God spoke to me in the early 90s, man. It was like, get out. Like, this is not for you. And I've been able to live that for almost 30 years, man, that I've been able to trust God in this way. And so I just want you to know that we love you. And if you're a parent, I don't think that it is easy to parent nowadays. It is extraordinarily difficult, especially with our schools going crazy. We're going to look back on this 20, 30 years from now and just laugh at how silly education was, where we were telling kids to pick their gender. And it's just very, very scary. So just be there for the kids and let them know we love them. And hopefully Sandals Church will be the place where kids that are questioning, kids that are gay, kids that are trans, they'll say, you know what? I may not believe in Jesus, but I know that church loves me, and it's a safe place for me to figure out who I am and who God's calling me to be. That is my home run for Sandals Church, that we could be that place. And again, parents in here, I hope that, you will allow your kids to be friends with kids that are gay, because they need friends. They need good friends, and they need the church. And so many times I see conservative parents shelter, and it's like, okay, it's okay to protect, but it's not okay to ostracize. And it drives me crazy. And so, we want to love these kids, and we want to, because our kids are going to have to go out in the world at some point. So I would rather have them have to figure that out in the church. So thank you so much, both of you guys. I love you. I am honored to be your pastor. I love your kids. I love seeing you at the Hunter Park campus each and every week. And Anissa, thanks for praying with me alongside when people, you see the people that are hurting at our church. And it's just so sad, the amount of things that people are going through every week. I mean, this week was just, right. Oh my gosh. I was like, is anybody coming out not crying? As I was standing there greeting people. So, but hopefully they were good tears. So thank you for listening, Sandals Church. Thank you, Cindy. Thank you, Anissa. Thank you to your family. We love you guys. And I thank you for these real conversations. See you next week.
Thanks for listening to the Debrief podcast with Matt Brown. If you enjoyed this episode, consider liking, subscribing, and sharing it with a friend. If you would like to submit a question to Pastor Matt, you can do so at move.sc/ask. And if you would like to support the work we are doing, consider donating at donate.sc. Thank you again, and have a blessed day.